Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I have an absolutely fascinating young lady, young entrepreneur, to introduce you tonight, Emily Lyons. She came out of nowhere to create something called Femme Fatale Media and was a huge success. And then, she started branching into lots of other things, marketing, promotion, and a matchmaking service. And recently I've seen that she is posting about a seminar series on personal branding. And so I thought I'd reach out to her and find out what she thinks about personal branding. What does she teach in her seminar? But let's, Emily Lyons, first introduce you to our audience. Tell us a little, welcome to the show, and tell us, if you could, a little bit how you got started in being an entrepreneur.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind words. I got started as being an entrepreneur because I couldn't hold down a job for the life of me. Just didn't have anything passionate, and read a book that sparked the idea to me called Career Renegade.
Called what?
Career Renegade. And it was all about how to make a great living doing what you love. And so suddenly I had this idea for entrepreneurship and set off running, and the rest is history. It's been an incredible journey. Lots of up and downs as it goes, but I've loved it.
Now you look reasonably young. How long have you been doing this entrepreneurial journey?
13 years. 2009, I started that business. Yeah.
And this is Femme Fatale?
That's Femme Fatale. Yeah.
And tell us, what does Femme Fatale do?
So we started as an event staffing agency. So we started with providing, promotional models for different local events. And then we expanded and we started doing larger scale staffing for corporations and expanded there and there and there to different cities, different countries. So we basically do all different types of staffing. And then we also do the experiential marketing side of it. So we do the entire build out for our clients. And then we also do some of their communications in-house as well.
What's experiential marketing?
Experiential marketing. So, when you are walking somewhere and you see those great activations of people giving out samples and it's really immersive and you see those great brand ambassadors there, that's what it is. So it's live events, essentially.
And then I came across you when you were doing, marketing and marketing advisory as well as event management business. Is that also part of your gig?
It is. We have a great team to kind of keep everything under one roof, as it's been requested over the years. So we've just expanded to provide our clients what they're looking for.
Fantastic. And then you went into the matchmaking business. Is that correct?
I do. I have an elite matchmaking agency. So back in 2013, it started. I was just introducing people. We were doing a lot of events. We had a very large roster of people. We had some incredible clients. And so I would introduce people and they would end up together. So it was funny because I started getting all these messages and emails from strangers being like, I hear you know everybody. Could you introduce me to somebody? And so I've always been a hopeless romantic, obsessed with rom-coms and all that. And I started looking into it, and I was in New York at the time. And so I started looking to see what they had there and how it was missing in Canada. And so that's when I set out to develop Lyons Elite. So I launched that in 2014. I've got our three of our core matchmakers and then 2 dating coaches on our team, and they are incredible. So it's been an incredible company. When you get to introduce people to their partner, you're a part of their life forever. There's a couple I introduced, actually, they've got a newborn baby now. So they've been sending me photos. So yeah, it is just an incredible company.
What, pray tell, is a dating coach?
Just like a coach with anything, and you've got
people need to be coached in how to date.
If you've been married for 20, 30, 40 years, and now all of a sudden you're single and you don't know really how it all works. You've never been on a dating app. You haven't been out dating in so long. Yes. And some people just lack the skills of confidence or how to flirt or how to pick somebody up. And so we help them with all those different areas. And things like, one of the biggest things for dating now, unfortunately, is your photos. That's the first thing that people see. They're going to look you up. They're going to see what your photos look like on your social media. And that's how they're judging you on. And so that's a big thing that we coach people on, is how to get great photos.
Really fascinating. So we're all being evaluated by how we look.
If you think about it, it's what everybody does. As soon as you match with somebody or anything. If you're going to hire,
all about what was inside here.
Right. I know.
That's not. And then I saw that you had branched out and you were doing seminars on personal branding. What's that all about?
So I had a company reach out to me a couple of years ago and ask if I would go and speak to them about personal branding. And then I had a university reach out to me. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. And I started to realize that that was one of the big key strategies to my success, was building a personal brand. And I didn't consciously set out to build one. I was just trying to promote femme fatale. And as a result, I started to build one. And then I was able to leverage that to launch Lyons Elite and my different endeavors, and then other monetization paths from that personal brand as well. And so now I have, set out to teach it as well to people. And it's been a lot of fun.
Well, we're going to take a break for some messages and come back more and ask Emily Lyons a little bit about what we would learn if we were lucky enough to be invited to one of her personal branding seminars. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight about personal branding with Emily Lyons, who runs a couple of different companies. One of them is Femme Fatale Media Group. Another one is a elite dating matchmaking company. And I guess it's Femme Fatale or an offshoot of Femme Fatale that does marketing and communications and branding work. So you've really got a couple of different businesses. But personal branding is the seminar that I saw that you posted about just recently. And it looked really quite intriguing. Can you tell me a little bit about what you talk about in your seminars about personal branding?
Personal branding. Yes. So it is so essential for everybody to be building their personal brand right now. First of all, if you're showing up online in any capacity, you're already building one without consciously building one. So you might as well be curating one that is going to benefit you and be one that you're proud of. So when you've got the brand of you, when you've got the Brian Crombie brand, you can take that, you can have your radio show, you can launch all different things because people know who you are, and people connect so much more to people than they do to businesses. So if you look at Elon Musk, for example, he's famous for being an entrepreneur, but his Twitter page alone has more followers than all three of his businesses combined, because people want to follow people. People connect with people. They connect with stories, and we want to buy from them, and we want to buy from people that we like. And so if you're building a business, even if you're not, if you're an employee, it gives you that safety net, because you can take that, you can pivot it and launch new things, because you can lose your job, you can lose your business, but you can't lose the brand of you. So it gives you a ton of opportunities, and it's really putting your story out there, what you want to be known for, your passions, your missions, adversities you've overcome, things that are important to you consistently, whether it's via social media, the regular media, all different ways, and building that brand around you.
And so how do you figure out what your brand is going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really sitting down and thinking about, what is your true authentic story? What makes you unique? What's different about you? What is something that you stand for? What are your passions? Do you have a business? Why did you start that business? What's the reason behind it? What is your overall why in the world, or your why behind your business? And then figuring it out with all the different pieces and putting it together from there.
Some people spend a lifetime trying to figure out who their true authentic self is and what their passion is. Have you got any secrets on how one can actually go about figuring out what their passion is, what their true authentic self is?
Yeah. Just sitting down and asking yourself some of those questions. And you can also take note of, what do people come to me for advice for? What do people ask me a lot of questions, or get feedback from your friends or your colleagues? What do they think of you when they think of you? Or what are your core values? Sit down and list, what are my 10 core values? What are 3 words I would want people to think of when they think of me? And then, thinking, what is the most important thing to me? What do I want my legacy to be when I'm long and gone? And then also thinking about, who are some of the people that you're really attracted to? So who are some of the influencers, some of the biggest influential people in your life? There's a reason you're attracted to them. And so for me, it's always been Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs. He always talked about thinking differently, innovating, being yourself despite whatever anybody thinks, following your passions. And for me, I connect to his core values when I break it down and when I really look at it. And so figuring those things out. And we all have a unique story. We've all had different adversities that we've gone through. What have you gone through, and what did you learn from it that you could share with the world that could help them?
It's interesting. You talk about adversities as being the way that you sort of develop your story, not successes. Why is that?
We can't all relate to success, but we can all relate to failures because we've all had struggles. And so when we can share those and inspire people from some part of our story, then we can make a difference in the world. Not only can we build a brand and monetize it, but we can actually help other people. And when we focus first and foremost on making that impact, on helping people, on doing good in the world, then success and money will always be a byproduct of that.
So I went to one seminar once where they told me suggested to me to write a personal brand statement and stick it on the wall and read it every day. So something that did describe the true authentic self, but also was aspirational as to who I wanted and what I wanted to be. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. You could absolutely try doing that.
And you talked about sort of leaving a legacy. The other suggestion I got once was write down the eulogy that you would like said at your funeral. And if the eulogy that you think is going to be said doesn't sort of, resonate with what you would like, you realize you got to change things quick time before someone describes you how you would not like to be described.
Absolutely. That's powerful.
But still, true authentic self, that sounds like buzzwords, isn't it? True authentic self.
Well, the problem is sorry, I have allergies. The problem is that when we start to build a personal brand, we start to think of what do I want to be known for without it being a reflection of who you truly are. And it has to be who you are. Otherwise, you're going to keep showing up as this person that you're not. And you can be anything and anyone, but make sure that you back that up with your actions. You're saying, your do, all of those things match, and not just online, but when you're in person, when you're meeting people. And so that's what I mean when I'm saying authentic and honest. Is it actually who you are? Because people are going to figure it out pretty quickly if it's not, and they're going to lose trust in you, and whatever you wanted to get out of having a personal brand, whatever opportunities, you're not going to be able to. Consumer distrust is already at an all-time high.
So what's your personal brand?
My personal brand? Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I love to help people, especially the underdogs that are starting in a similar capacity that I had started. And then I love to help people that are disabled, people in the cystic fibrosis community. That is really my mission and my passion. That's why I have my foundation, the Julia Lyons Foundation, in memory of my sister. Both my siblings were born with cystic fibrosis. And so those are largely my passions. That's what I talk about a lot. And I talk about mental health. I talk about addiction, overcoming those, because those were all part of my story years back. And, finding success despite whatever obstacles are thrown at you.
So the cystic fibrosis and overcoming addiction, wonderful, passions in life and objectives. But how does that help your business?
How does it help me? It's interesting because people ask that, why does your personal story affect your business? Well, people don't buy products or services, they buy stories, and they buy from people, and more so people that they like. So for a long time, when I started my business back in 2009, I was really showing up online how I thought people wanted me to show up. So it was that typical CEO, with the curated images, never showed any part of my actual story. Now, in 2011, when my sister passed away from the cystic fibrosis, afterwards, I really struggled. So I dealt with drinking alcohol every day, and severe depression and anxiety, to the point where September of that year, I actually checked myself into CAMH, a mental health facility. So I stayed there for a month, and I came out, and I was so terrified of anybody knowing, because I thought, if anybody knows, I'm never going to be able to grow my business. People aren't going to want to work with me. They're going to think that I'm, weak or whatever it is, and back then too, in 2011, we weren't so open about mental health. But as the years went on, about a year later, I started to change. When you go through that huge type of loss, it changes who you are on a fundamental level. And so I started to not really care so much about being that picture perfect person. And I really wanted to live life to the fullest in memory of my sister as well. So I started to just open up with snippets of my story, and the exact opposite effect happened than I thought. So that was when people started sharing my content to thousands, and I started growing. Now I've got 180,000 followers on Instagram. I've got almost 100,000 on my Facebook, from sharing those parts of my stories, not the success or the awards or all the things with business, but of the things that I had gone through and how I'd survived it. So talking about how I was in the mental hospital, eventually going out with that, how grief destroyed me and how I found my way back from that. And that is when I started to get asked to be interviewed by places like Forbes. So Forbes wanted to do a profile on me. So I'd been pitching these places for 2 years now at this point, not getting any reply. And now they were coming to me. I had clients reaching out to me saying, oh my gosh, I had struggled with that as well after I lost my partner or whatever it was. And they wanted to, we were building these close relationships outside of just being clients. We were becoming friends. So it had the exact polar opposite effect of what I had thought, because I was humanizing my brand. I was humanizing who I was and my businesses. So
Brene Brown talks a lot about the power of vulnerability. And I guess that sounds like what you're doing. Is that like being vulnerable? Is that key?
Absolutely. 100%.
Fascinating. You seem like such an upbeat, always positive, bubbly personality. I just find it hard to believe that you were in a mental health facility, that you were overcome by grief, that you suffered from addiction, that you're ever down.
You know what? It's interesting because during that time when I went to a few different people and I was saying, I need help. I can't get out of bed. I cry all the time. I need alcohol to just function. And everybody kept saying to me, you're fine. You're fine. You're okay. You're fine. Oh, it's just a blip, or we all have lots to drink. It's okay. Because we see people when they smile and we don't think that they suffer behind closed doors. But no, it was absolutely a terrible, terrible time in my life. And I'm just so thankful that I got that help. It completely changed me and was such a godsend.
So how'd you get through it? Was it some help at CAMH, or was it something else that got you through the problems?
It was a bit of everything. CAMH was definitely a game changer. Just having that one-on-one with somebody every single day to talk through things and be around other people that had suffered great losses. And some people were recovering from PTSD and things like that. And also because I think because I grew up the middle child of 2 terminally ill siblings, so both being terminally ill, I was always the healthy one. So it was always, oh, Emily's fine. We have to focus on these 2. And I don't blame, my parents or my family because they were terminally ill. But I think that it got to that point where it was finally like, okay, I can get help too. I can be noticed and be the sick one and all of that. And so no, I think it was CAMH was definitely a godsend that saved me for sure. And entrepreneurship, having something that I loved to go back to, and that I was building and creating and being able to make an impact in other people's lives.
What a fascinating story. And so tell me a little bit about how Femme Fatale got going.
Yeah, well, the book that I read talked about taking something that you love and turning it into a business. And it was really the premise of the book is you can take anything that you love and figure out a monetization path. And really, it's a lot easier now today because this is now years ago. So the book is pretty outdated, but the only job I'd ever had at the time that I had ever enjoyed was working part-time as a brand ambassador, going and socializing at events and meeting new people. And so I thought, I'm going to make an agency that supplies these brand ambassadors. And it's funny because I remember at the time I wrote down on a piece of paper, if I can just make $30,000 a year, I'll be happy. I can afford my basement apartment and food, and that's all I'll ever want. That was my goal. But then I just, set off running, figured it out.
Must have been tough in the pandemic with events, grinding to a massive halt.
It was interesting, but we pivoted and we were able to. The good thing is because I had diversified with different companies, I was able to leverage a lot of the assets for those companies, like a lot of our team, and move them over to the companies that were picking up. So things like matchmaking really took off because people couldn't meet people at bars anymore or restaurants because they were all closed down. So now they were turning to matchmakers. And they were focused on really what's important. A pandemic brings all those things to life, finding a partner, starting a family. And so that company took off while the other one was on pause. So I was thankful that I had diversified, but also launching new virtual services that we could do through the company as well.
What kind of virtual services?
Like virtual sampling as opposed to on-street sampling, things like that, targeting people directly, influencer marketing, things like that.
What's influencer marketing?
Influencer marketing? It's, on social media, when you see somebody that you follow. Maybe they've got a lot of followers. Maybe they've got a smaller amount if they're a smaller influencer, but they're partnered with a company and they're promoting their product or service. So they hire them, they pay them, or they give them free product in exchange for it. But generally influencer marketing is they pay you, you promote the product, you drive sales ideally to them.
And so what, you started becoming an influencer marketer, or you were advising people on how to become an influencer marketer?
So I did it myself. I did a commercial for Revlon. I did some different collaborations with people like Warner Brothers and American Express, but we also provided them for a lot of our clients as well.
Fascinating. You really have, broadened out your offerings quite dramatically.
Yes, there's always different opportunities out there.
Is there a secret to being an excellent entrepreneur?
Yes, resilience, grit, getting back up again and again and again. It's interesting because for me in my life, I was conditioned to think that failure was the opposite of success, but really it's part of success. And the sooner you wrap your head around that, and the sooner you can get that mindset of it doesn't matter what failures come, because I'm going to keep going. I'm going to find a way to figure it out. I'm going to find a way to win. And that changed the game for me.
So that's one of the things you say that's important for an entrepreneur, but I guess it's also important for people in their own personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
Fail and learn from it, and then turn it around for success. And so resilience is key. Where does the resilience come from?
For me?
For anybody. Where does resilience come for you? Where do you think it comes from?
Where does resilience come from? Resilience, some people can be naturally resilient. Some people have to develop it, but it takes, I think, practice, developing a thick skin, and really consciously reframing. Sorry, my dogs. There's somebody at the door. Really reframing your mindset of not overreacting to situations. So, when I look back to my early days in entrepreneurship and things that had happened, when I got so upset about it, it didn't do anything for me. What I should have done is taken a step back, thought about things rationally, which of course is hard sometimes, and then come back with solutions. And so reframing that narrative in your mind. But there is an incredible book. It's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. She also has a TED Talk on YouTube, and it's all about, they conducted this massive study where they looked at the world's most successful people. And they found that the most successful people that achieved incredible, great success compared in all different areas, not just business and athletic ability, all of those things, achieved great success compared to people that were more talented than them. And they found that the single biggest determining factor to success in general was resilience and having that ability to keep going.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Grit. Resilience sounds like it's the secret to success. We're chatting tonight with Emily Lyons of Femme Fatale Media Marketing and a matchmaking company, elite matchmaking company, and sounds like a lot of other businesses. And we're talking about personal branding. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more. And I'm going to ask Emily, once you've established that real authentic self, that brand vision for who you are, how you go about actually amplifying it and creating it. Social media is one of the things she's mentioned, but how do you actually do it? Stay with us, everybody. We'll be back with Emily in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting today with Emily Lyons of the Femme Fatale Media Marketing Organization, plus a elite matchmaking organization. She does marketing, she does communications, she does event promotional work, and she tries to set up people with their mate. And that sounds kind of fun. We may ask you a little bit about that in the future as well. But we're talking now about personal brands. And what you had said for personal brands, you got to figure out what your passion is, who your true authentic self is, and what makes you unique and different from other people. Once you've done that and you've figured out what your brand is, what do you do? What do you recommend in your seminars for people to do to actually, amplify it, to get known by it?
That's a great question. So I always tell them the acronym SALT, S-A-L-T. S is for social media, putting it out there consistently on as many social media platforms as possible, but ideally Instagram, Clubhouse, which is a great one, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. As many places. You want to be as visible as possible, and then showing up consistently, showing all different aspects of your life behind the scenes, all that. The A is for awards and accolades. So like I said earlier, consumer distrust is at an all-time high. You can go online and say you're just about anybody, right? So you can say, oh, I'm this incredible radio host, Brian Crombie. But if you say I'm the award-winning radio host, I've got awards from X, Y, and Z, it gives you more validation. So that's the next thing. And then the L is for live speaking. So you want to get on stages because, again, that's going to further brand you as an expert in your niche. It's going to give you more visibility. You're going to get visibility to large audiences, ideally in your niche. So you can do virtual ones, you can do them for free at the beginning, but there's a ton of different events, conferences, all that. And then the T is for traditional media. So radio shows, podcasts, getting interviews, blogs, all that kind of thing, again, to get your name out there more. And even though they're going to be, and first of all, it's going to be a lot easier to get interviewed when it's you, as opposed to pitching your business, because people don't want to feature businesses. It's more of an ad. It's a story, and it's going to tie into what you do. It's going to come back to your business and link to there. But those are basically the core fundamentals that I teach them to get the brand out there once they figure out what it is. And it might take some fine tuning when you're trying to figure out how to tell your story, because you want to make sure you're not trauma dumping, that you're leaving it on a positive note.
Trauma dumping, is that a word? Trauma dumping?
It's a saying. Trauma dumping, where you talk about something you went through and it ends really negative. And so that's why it's important, if you're going through something, you wait until you've healed from it so that you can speak from the scar and not the wound.
So I've talked to a few people about this, and two suggestions that have come out. Let me check with you if they make any sense. Is that number one, I think everyone has a signature story. And the signature story for you may have been, your two siblings and cystic fibrosis, and connected the addiction and mental health and your challenge and overcoming all that. And I think that everyone has that signature story, and it often is a struggle. It doesn't have to be, it can be a huge success, but it's something that defines who they are. And I think figuring out what that signature story is, and then finding out a good way of describing it. So you're not trauma dumping, if that's the term you used, but that you're being open and you're being vulnerable, you're being frank, and being able to describe that, because that's what, number one, defines who you are, and number two, captures people's attention because they identify with it.
100%.
So that's the number one suggestion. And then coming out of that signature story is thinking about the lessons learned. And, whether it's the 3 lessons learned or the 7 lessons learned, or the SALT that is, your little mnemonic that you use to guide, but coming out with something that people can remember. And these are the things that you need to bring out from your own personal story. What do you think about those two suggestions?
Love it. I think those are great.
Okay. And then, if social media is number one, and you've talked about the ways to do that, and then number 2 is awards and accolades. How do you go about getting those awards and accolades?
Oh my gosh, there's so many different opportunities. There are different awards for your city, for your country, for your niche. Apply to all of them. Apply. The more you show up on social media, the more people see you, the more likely they're going to consider you for these awards. But I mean, anything. There's Women in Business awards. There's all different areas. So apply for all of them.
There seems to be a plethora of different award ceremonies, award dinners, and things like this.
Yeah.
Do they actually mean do they mean anything when there's thousands of people getting these awards?
That's the thing, right? You got to do some research, because some of them don't mean anything. They're a company. They just want to make money. It's really a marketing agency, but you can do some research and you can find some good ones.
Yeah. I get, called up saying, we want to give you this award. And you can come to the dinner. We're going to give you a nice award. But number 1, can you sell a table or 2? And number 3, can you sponsor the
right? Yeah. I've been hit up by those people too.
So it really is a business of generating some sort of an award for you, just so that you can pay some money for them.
There are some really good ones that don't charge you, and those are the key ones. Ones by women of influence. They've got a great one. Or they're sponsored by different large corporations, so they're not asking the person for money. So it's legitimate. So they either have a team that chooses the person that's being awarded. You have to fill out all these forms, or it's voted by the public. So you want to look for ones like those. Okay.
So it was SALT. So social media, awards and accolades. L was for live events. how do you get those live event speaking opportunities?
So at the beginning, you're going to have to do them for free. I know a lot of people charge for them, but for a while you should do them for free because you get so much benefits from it. And if you have any products or services, you can usually promote those as well. But again, looking online, looking at any upcoming events, you can go on LinkedIn, look at their event section. You can go on Eventbrite, you can Google it, see any events in your area or any virtual events, find the organizer on LinkedIn, reach out to them. Go on Instagram, reach out to the organizer. Hey, this is what I do. And if you've been putting your brand out there on social media where it's clear what you do, what you talk about. So when they land on your page, it's like, oh, okay, Brian Crombie, he's a radio host. This is what he talks about. I can see that right here. Okay, yeah, he might be great to have as a speaker. But reach out to them. Hey, I'd love to come and talk at your event about how to be a great host and speak with authority. Okay, that'd be great. Lots of opportunities out there. And lots of exposure and opportunities will come from those because you never know who is watching. And also, too, you can get a lot of great content on stage, behind the scenes, all that you can repurpose for your social media to help tell your story.
Do you have any recommendations on how to develop that live talk?
That live talk, yes. Get on Clubhouse. It is an audio app, audio only. You go on there and you talk live in rooms, they call them. So you can go on stage and it just helps you to practice your speaking, talking on the fly, and helps you develop different speeches. So you can come up with different ones. You can host a room, and then see what kind of feedback you get from people right away. And so I would recommend people use that to prepare for it.
So I've got a couple of suggestions for you. Let me see what you think about that. So I do think that, when you write down your story, again, having that signature story that is part of who you are is important to figure out how you say it, and writing it down is helpful to figure out how you say it and how it connects together, et cetera. Then being able to, bring it all together in some lessons learned, like your SALT or something like that, is, I think, key. And again, write it down. But then after you've written it down, put it in point form, because the worst thing you can do is read. And so therefore, writing it down knows what you want to say, but then putting it in very, very point form. So very summary that gives you an outline so that you have to talk. You can't just read, I think is helpful. And then I recommend to people that they do it on video and watch themselves and critique themselves. And so therefore they get a sense of how they look, how they talk. Do they say too much? Do they say like too much? Things like that. And then I think that doing an interview is really helpful because what you've got is the benefit of someone asking you questions, and you can provide the interviewer with leading questions that allows you to bring it out. But it's so much more helpful to get your message across when you don't have to do a monologue for 15 minutes. You can actually come back and forth with someone that is interviewing you. Then I would recommend really low risk speaking environments. And, there's a million Rotary clubs and other organizations around that are desperate for speakers. And there's only 20, 30, 40 people in the room, but you get out there and you do it a couple of times. You do a speech a couple of times in front of a live audience, you get really good at doing it. And then I think these TEDx, are really helpful because they force you to speak without notes, 18 minutes, completely rehearsed. And it's a spectacular way of making sure that you know what you're talking about and you get your message across. So what do you think of those suggestions?
I love those. Toastmasters is also great.
Yep.
And then we can go and practice your speech in front of a bunch of people.
Okay. So we've done this brand exercise. We figured out what is our unique self, our real, authentic you, our passion. Then we've exercised SALT, and it's social media, awards and accolades, live events, and traditional. And we haven't talked about traditional. How do you go out and get the traditional media?
You go out there and you start pitching that story. So you've got a great story, and keeping in mind that you want to have something that's attention grabbing, but doing some research first and foremost about who covers your topics and where are they. So where do you want to be featured? Where is your target audience? What are they reading? What are they listening to? And then figuring out who covers those stories, who is the host of those shows, and reaching out to them with a great pitch, taking time to research them, give them support. So if you want to be on Brian's show, the first thing that I would do if I was going to track down Brian is I would follow you on all your social media platforms, and I would start giving you support. I would start sharing all your posts. I would look, do you have a podcast? Where can I give you a 5-star review? Take a screenshot, share it to you so that you already have that. Same with when we do sales, we want to give some sort of value, some sort of support. So then when we reach out to them, you're more like, I've seen Emily around. She's always sharing my post. I'm interested to read what she has to say. And then when you reach out to Brian, hey, Brian, I love your show. This is who I am. I thought I could come on and talk about X, Y, Z, preparing potential topic or interviews so that part of your job is done. So you can do that via LinkedIn, via email, and just switching up, tweaking your story. And I think the problem is people start to do this. They do it a couple of times and then they get discouraged when they don't get a reply or they get that no. But keeping in mind that a lot of these people get pitched hundreds of times a day. So being consistent, following up once or twice, and then just tweaking your story. If you're not getting a reply, your story might be off. And remembering that these are businesses. So what is their target? To have more listeners so that they can sell ad space. So how do they do that? Well, through a really great story, through something that's going to get eyeballs on them. And if there's anything else that you can add in there to help differentiate yourself, maybe if you've got a social media following. Also, I would love to share this interview afterwards with my X amount of social media followers or whatever it is to help give you that added boost that's going to help them hit their target of more eyeballs on their website or listeners.
Excellent. So I'll give you a couple of suggestions. See again what you think of that based on my experience doing this radio show. I got more attention on a couple of articles that I wrote and got published in either newspapers. I got an article column published in the Toronto Sun that I was shocked at how well read it was, and then when I posted the link to it on social media, for some reason when it was actually published in a newspaper, it was like the stamp of approval that said this is actually worth reading, and tons of people read it, and I got big response from it. Similarly, I've published in an academic journal, and the piece that I wrote in the academic journal, just because, again, an academic journal accepted it and published it, seemed to have given it a lot more leverage. And so I think reaching out to get those, even, old newspapers and academic journals is really helpful. The other thing that I found interesting is when I do interviews with people and all they do is they rely, and I've got 20,000 listeners. And so therefore it's a certain amount of broadcast benefit that they get. But I have people that get as much, if not more, attention on social media when they just do a little work themselves in doing the promotion. I've had people that will not just share my post on LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, but then will, make a, fascinating conversation with Brian Crombie, here it is, or something like that. They have an intro comment and then they send it out to all of their people through whatever their social media reach is. It doubles and triples the audience. It's dramatic, the difference. And I don't know how people do this, whether it's natural or whether it's set up, but if you get a few people to comment on it, maybe it's the algorithms that then grab it and pay more attention to it. But when I can notice that when a few people comment, particularly if someone has reshared and made a comment on my post of their interview, and then there's a few comments on that, it blows up, and there's thousands of viewers. So I think there's something about promoting yourself, promoting your own interview, promoting your own speech, promoting your own article that is critically important. And then making it social, getting other people to comment about it.
Yes. And one of the things when I tell people this is they say, but isn't that, conceited? No, if you're not going to cheer for yourself and promote your own self, your own interviews, how are you going to expect other people to? And us as Canadians too are especially bad for that, I find.
Well, and I think it's, if you believe you've got a message, why wouldn't you want to amplify that message and get it out there? Otherwise, why are you saying anything if you don't have a message?
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about SALT. We've talked about figuring out what you want to say. What else do you teach in your seminars? Do you talk about following up and evaluating? If you can do that, what else do you talk about?
We talk about different growth strategies for social media. So creating valuable content to your target audience. So, when I'm showing up on social media, not only am I building my personal brand, but I'm always focusing on providing value-based content. So I'm always asking myself, what value does this provide my audience? I want to do something through telling parts of my story. So I either want to motivate and inspire them, I want to teach them something, I want to make them laugh, I want to do something like that, because then when you can post that valuable content, that's when you get that engagement you talked about, where people are sharing it, they're commenting, and that's what triggers the algorithm to say, this must be valuable content. We should show it to more people. You get that growth, you get that exposure to other people that aren't following you. So we talk about a lot about that, and then just different changes in the algorithm, the importance of photos and showing up on video to communicate your story and all those good things. Different little tips and tricks, like joining Haro. I don't know if you've ever joined Haro, Help a Reporter Out.
No, what's that?
Oh, brilliant service. It's free. I think you can do an upgraded version. I've never used the upgraded one, but you join it and you get a couple emails every day from journalists that are requesting experts to comment on different articles. So you'd get maybe 50 different email requests in the morning, every single day. And it'll be like, writer from Forbes is looking for Canadian entrepreneur to comment on the trends for 2022 coming up in the fall, something like that. Anybody can respond. And if they like what your response is, they'll publish you. So little things like that, because the good thing with those is not only are you getting that exposure, right? You can add right away as seen in Forbes, but also when they're linking to you, all these different publications, you start to get search engine optimization juice. So it starts to tell Google, this is a valuable website. We should bump it up in the Google rankings. So you start to, now if you have your personal website, which you should, and you're branding it to be an expert in something, right? If you want to come up as an expert in Canadian media, Brian Crombie, expert in media. So when people start to Google those keywords, you're going to come up on the first page. So you're going to get a whole heap of exposure and ongoing inquiries when you start to go up. And the way you do that, one of the big ways, is by getting links from authoritative other websites. So websites like Forbes, like Yahoo News, or whatever it might be, or Bloomberg Media. So Haro is a really great way to do all of those things. And you get published pretty quickly, because a lot of those experts are on a deadline. They're like, I need somebody to comment within the next 48 hours, or CTV News, I need to interview somebody for this. So if you've got the time, years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I would sit down and I'd say, today I'm going to respond to 20 Haro posts. And that would be my target. And because I had different businesses, I could respond based on whatever business it applied to. So
it's fascinating. How do you spell this?
Haro. So Haro, and it stands for Help a Reporter Out.
Help a Reporter Out, Haro.
Yeah.
And there was a term you used, search engine optimization juice. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So it's SEO, search engine optimization, and that's optimizing your site to show up. When you've got good SEO, you show up on the first pages, but juice. So that SEO juice. So there's the different things that you can do to get that good SEO juice.
So you juice it up. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that term before. Absolutely fascinating. We're chatting tonight with Emily Lyons about personal branding and a lot more, and how to get noticed, and how to make connections, and how to get speaking gigs and things like that. We're going to take a break for some final messages and come back with some concluding comments from Emily Lyons in just 2 minutes. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Emily Lyons. She is the CEO, founder of several different companies. One is Femme Fatale, and it's a organization that does event promotional business. What's the website, Emily, if people want to go to and check out Femme Fatale?
Yes, it's femfatalemedia.com. So FEMMEFATALEMEDIA.com.
And you also run a matchmaking business. And what's the name of that, and the website?
It's Lyons Elite Matchmaking. So LYONSELITE. So lyonselite.com.
And do you have any other websites we should know about?
I got a lot of ones, but you can go to my website, which is Miss Emily Lyons, MSEmilyLyons.com, and it'll link to all my different endeavors.
Fantastic. Well, it's really quite interesting how successful you've been at such a young age. And so thank you very much for being an inspiration. You also commented recently on social media that females shouldn't be worried about being female, about wearing feminine clothes. If not, frankly, it almost looked like you were suggesting sexy clothes.
Yeah.
Tell me about, why you posted that and what your opinion is on it.
I find that we get pigeonholed You know, once we're a CEO, that's all we can be. We're no longer a female. We can no longer dress sexy, even though we have that side of us. I still like to dress up and wear sexy dresses sometimes and post photos of it. It doesn't make me any less of a leader or less of a great CEO in my job. And so I think we should be proud to showcase all the different sides of our personalities and show up when we feel like showing up as that. And as we learned through the pandemic, it's no longer we leave our personal life at home and we just show up as that professional person. No, it's all intertwined, and we all are multifaceted with different sides of us. And being a strong female means being yourself and showing up with your femininity if that's how you feel. And so that's what I talk about sometimes.
You talked a lot, both when we were talking about dating, but also when we were talking about business and also personal branding, that people connect to people. And you made the comment about people buy from people, they don't buy from businesses. And so that's one of the reasons why you talked about how your personal brand was important to you, but also important to the business that you were associated with. And I presume you talked about the picture and the connection obviously being important in matchmaking. Mm-hmm. Why is it that people buy from people, not from businesses? What is it about the connection, the personal connection, that you think is so important?
Humans love a story. We love a good story. It's what connects in us. What motivates us. You know, do you buy a Lamborghini because it's a Lamborghini, or do you buy it because to you it says success, and it gives you that feeling, that emotion behind feeling successful and showing the world you're successful, the story behind all of it. You know, and so that's what really, when you get down to it, what a lot of it is. But not only do we want to buy from people, but more so people that we like, people that we know are good humans. And so again, we saw this with the pandemic where companies were being called out for having bad leaders. And so people more so than ever before are really taking note of who the CEOs are behind those businesses. And do they operate with good ethics and all of those things?
Fascinating. You know, I used to work for a very successful billionaire by the name of Jimmy Pattison. And he used to always say, in the end, Brian, people buy from people. And I think that's the key, is that no matter how, you've got to have a good product, you got to have a good service, you got to have good marketing, you got to have good distribution, you got to have good of all those other things. But in the end, the difference is people buy from people. And people buy from people they like, respect, and trust.
One of my best friends is Keith Grossman, and he's the president of Time Magazine. And him and I talk about this to great extents. And so since he took over being the president of Time, that's really what his mission has been trying to humanize the Time brand, because he thinks it's so important now, more so than ever.
Emily Lyons, thank you so much for educating us a little bit about personal branding. I think that the idea of figuring out who your true, authentic self is, I think wondering about, what that challenge is that you had, the problems you had that define who you are is critical, even though you don't want to get, trauma dumped. And so therefore you don't want too much of that. I love the idea of SALT, which is social media, awards and accolades, live entertainment, live events, not live entertainment, but live events, and traditional media. I think that's wonderful. And then, I think that your whole idea about, connecting with people, and that people buy from people, and how critically important that is. And I think it's important on social media. I think it's important in real life. I think it's important in dating. I think it's important in salesmanship for a business. And I think it's critically important in our personal lives. And so I think this has been really helpful tonight. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your education. I look forward to maybe taking one of your courses sometime.
Oh, wonderful. I'd love to have you.
Well, that's our show for tonight, everybody. I remind you, I'm on 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online. Even Emily from Stratford at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videocasts are available on Speakeasy, Audible, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And my videocasts are on my website, briancrombie.com. They're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and on my YouTube channel, Brian Crombie. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great evening. Emily Lyons, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.